I can.
I went to church twice today.
You
Good for
got
you.
yourself
Once,
wide open. Good afternoon and welcome to today's adventure on Black Health Trust. We really appreciate you joining with us this evening as we discuss a very serious topic. And without further ado, I turn it over to our founder, Dr. Randall Maxey.
Good afternoon, everyone. Hello, Dr. Barbara Davis, Stephen, Dr. Ivan Moss, Dr. Lawson, Dr. Hines, and a special welcome to our guest speaker today, who is Dr. Stephen McLeod Bryant. He is the immediate past president of the Association of Black Psychiatrists. We're very honored to have him. He was recommended initially by Dr. Ron Bailey, psychiatrist who is the current and new president of the Association of Black Psychiatrists. Dr. McLeod Bryant, who spoke, I think, 3 weeks ago, received his bachelor's degree and his MD at the University of Rochester, where it's very cold. He completed his residency in psychiatry at Tufts New England Medical School Center in 1988. He served on the faculty of the Department of Psychiatry and Behavioral Sciences at the Medical University of South Carolina. And during those 2 years, he was medical director of the South Carolina Department of Mental Health and also Meharry Medical College and University of Miami. He's been a fellow of the American Psychiatric Association, president of the South Carolina Psychiatric. Let's just say he's very well qualified. I'm going to leave
yes.
time for him to talk. So we're glad to have him. He was stupendous when he spoke to us before. And they're going to talk about the issue of depression during the holidays, but we call it the holiday blues. Dr. McLeod Bryant, the floor is yours, and welcome to Black Health Trust.
Thank you so much, Dr. Maxey, for the kind introduction and the invitation back. I enjoyed myself thoroughly the first time a few weeks ago talking about social determinants. I'm very happy to talk with you now about beating the holiday blues and embracing its joy. This is a subject that keeps we psychiatrists busier than we'd like to be during this time, but hopefully we've learned some things that I can share with your audience to help prevent those blues from taking over the season. First, let me just say that I have no um, uh, financial investment or conflict of interest with respect to any of the information that I will be presenting to you today. I have a couple of objectives for this talk, which will take, I don't think, any more than 45 minutes. The first half of the talk will be looking at some of the causes for the holiday blues, the distress that we feel during the holidays, in particular focusing on why we Black Americans may be more at risk for some of these causes than other folks in this country. And then I'll spend the second half looking at remedies for preventing this distress and embracing the joy of the season. First, I'm going to begin looking at the biological causes for the holiday blues. I think one thing that I want to emphasize as a psychiatrist is the fact that many of us, in a sense, naturally experience poor moods during this time, not because of the holidays per se, but just because of the nature of a disorder called seasonal affective disorder. This is a disorder that's marked by depressions that typically occur in the late fall, early winter, which coincides with the holiday season. But even if the holidays were not there, people would be experiencing changes in appetite, mood, sleep disturbance, lack of energy. These periods of depression in the late fall and early winter are typically followed by either normal moods or hypomanic or manic moods in late spring or early summer. And it's been the study of this disorder has been shown that this is triggered by the stress caused by changing day and night patterns that occur with the fall equinox and the spring equinox and its effect on our circadian rhythms. This is a fairly common disorder. This is as common as folks who just have what we call typical unipolar major depression, much more common than diagnoses like schizophrenia or schizoaffective disorder. It's estimated that between 5 to 10% of adult Americans experience this disorder. And so I want to point that out to begin with, to suggest that many of us experience holiday blues not because of the holidays, but because of our mismatch with our circadian rhythms around this time of the day of the year. And so the remedy for this is somewhat different than, you know, the sort of typical remedies that you might see in the popular press about how to deal with holiday stress. And I'll get into that during the second half of the presentation. Now, when I spoke before, I mentioned the fact that um, uh, social determinants of health particularly affect we Black Americans with regards to disparities in mental health care. And we focus on the fact that economic and social opportunities and resources, living and working conditions in our homes and communities predispose us to having worse outcomes in terms of our medical care, regardless of the interactions that we may have with individual clinicians. I just want to remind us of this notion of social determinants because this has a part to play in terms of seasonal affective disorder. The social determinants of depression, particularly as it affects Black Americans, is the fact that we are less likely to receive treatment even when we recognize that we may have depression. A study of Medicaid recipients done a few years ago in which Medicaid claims data was taken from 28 states from around the United States, looking at any claim for depression and comparing Black, white, and Hispanic Medicaid recipients and seeing that even when there was a claim for depression, Black Americans were less likely, half as likely, to receive any form of treatment for that depression, whether it's medication or psychotherapy or both. When we look at even private insurance data, there was a Blue Cross Blue Shield study noting that in majority Black communities with less than the median number of mental health care providers nationally, that those communities were 14% less likely to have diagnoses of depression amongst the Blue Cross Blue Shield health insurance recipients. And so just one of the major social determinants that is affecting how well we do when we do have depression, particularly during the holidays, is the access to adequate medical care, mental health care that one provides a diagnosis. And then once we have a diagnosis, such as seasonal affective disorder, we receive the treatment that's necessary to help us to feel better. Another aspect of the social determinants of depression that's affecting us and makes us more at risk for these holiday blues is the notion of racial and self-stigma that have led to us to not seek the help that we otherwise might receive. This is from a study that was done. It's a suggestive study in that it was done with just under 200 individuals, Black individuals in a northeastern city, Philadelphia, who were identified as having either a mental illness or a substance use disorder or a combination of both. And these individuals went through an extensive interview process asking them about their mental health seeking behavior, the barriers that they encountered and whatnot. And racial stigma was measured by their exposure to acts of aggression or discrimination or prejudice that they experienced. They were asked if they had observed or been the victim of various aspects of racial discrimination or prejudice. and given a score of racial stigma depending on how often, how severe their victimization was. And then self-stigma was measured by how ashamed or guilty they felt about their mental health issues or substance abuse issues. And it was shown that those individuals that had had more quote unquote racial stigma or more self-stigma regarding their mental health diagnoses were less likely to seek the help, even though they were experiencing forms of depression. And the combination of the two, as you would expect, really seemed to prevent them from seeking help. And as you know, in our community, even though the stigma is lessening, things are much better now with regards to our perception and reception for mental health care and mental illness than, say, 20, 30, 50 years ago. There is still a significant stigma that tends to divert our efforts to get help for things such as seasonal affective disorder. Now, as is implied with this, the sort of the theory behind seasonal affective disorder, this notion of dysregulation of our circadian rhythms and how it can affect our mood has led to significant study as to, what is going on that uh, the change in light patterns would affect our mood so, and what are the things that may predispose us to that dysregulation, just besides just the change in the length of day and night. And it's been identified that social rhythms, patterns of behavior that impact our circadian rhythms, are critical in terms of maintaining our harmony with regards to the rising and falling of the sun. Rising from bed, first contact with another human being, start of our social function, whether that is going to work, going to school, beginning housework, whatever our primary social function is, the times that we start that, having dinner and going to bed have been shown to be sort of the five key rhythms in terms of maintaining our harmony with the circadian rhythm, and that the more irregular these rhythms are, the greater the risk of developing mood symptoms, particularly in people who have a predisposition or have prior episodes of depression or bipolar disorder. The more irregular these rhythms are, the more that they will require medication, the more that they will have episodes of depression or mania. And it's become a significant point of intervention and treatment. And obviously, the holidays, they threaten a major disruption to our social rhythms because of the parties, the differences in work schedule, family gatherings, and so forth. Whatever sort of social rhythms we may have had going into November, the holidays tends to disrupt them if we allow them to, and that will predispose us to having problems with our mood. Now, going beyond the biological, there are some psychological aspects to why we are prone to having the holiday blues. The American Psychological Association back in 2023 published a survey that they did of random Americans around the country and asking them about their perceived stress during the holidays. And they noted that nearly half of Americans do find the holidays more stressful rather than less. No surprise there. The things that were cited as most stressful were finances. Were they going to be able to uh, pay for all the gifts that they were planning to get, or whether because of their gift giving, was that going to cause them problems in the future? Finding the right gifts, missing family and loved ones, and the pressure to make the time special were the leading issues causing stress for folks responding to this survey. Now, again, looking at social determinants for we Black Americans, there are clear social determinants. I just listed a few here that would lead us to, when given these psychological uh, uh, problems or issues that we're dealing with during this time, we are more at risk due to the nature of the society that we live in. Just looking at wealth, of all the American wealth, all the assets, whether we're talking about cash, stocks, property, all those things that we hold of value in this country, white households um, own 82% of American wealth, while black households, which make up around they're about a quarter of households when compared to white households are black households. But as you can see, we hold less than 5% of all the wealth compared to, being 25% of the households of whites. And so given that disparity in wealth, if financial issues is a leading cause of stress during the holidays, we are going to be much more likely to have issues because of that stress. Our unemployment rate traditionally has been significantly higher than other races in America, and it's no different now, 50% higher than the US average. Again, a social determinant that leads to stress during the holidays. Another issue when talking about missing family or loved ones is the fact that we as a people, when compared to other Americans, we are less married. We are more alone as adults than other race and ethnicities in this country. There's been a long study of the roots of this that I won't get into, but when only a third of Black adults are currently married versus half of all Americans, and 50% of Black adults have never been married versus a third third of all Americans. Again, this gives you a sense of we are more at risk of being alone in this country, particularly during the holidays. And I'll talk more about other aspects of that estrangement, if you will, from one another when we talk about remedies. And then finally, I just wanted to look at sort of spiritual causes for the holiday blues. And this is from the Pew Research Center survey that they've done periodically over the years, comparing rates of religious affiliations among Black Americans. They do this for other Americans as well, but just comparing from 2007 to relatively current day. And you see the relative slow decline in affiliation with Christianity. And it's not so much that's not so much what I look at as being a warning flag, as there are other religions, obviously, and if for example, Islam and other religions that folks could be going to seek their spiritual solace and support. But notice the middle line, the religiously unaffiliated, that's been rising, and from the 12% to 22% currently. And it's the religiously unaffiliated that may lead to greater distress during these times, because we lose sight of what the holidays were supposed to mean, and from a religious point of view. And that leads me to turn now to what are some of the remedies for fighting or beating back the holiday blues. So I'm going to turn now to how do we embrace the holiday joy. And I think it begins spiritually, embracing the true reason for the season. The holiday season, there are a couple of major holidays. Obviously, Christmas is the major Christian celebration that most of us have been raised to celebrate and continue to celebrate, where God's Son bringing hope and salvation to the world. That is a message of joy and hope, but oftentimes is lost in everything that's going on during the holidays that is sort of taking us away from the true reason for the season. Hanukkah, another Jewish celebration occurring at this time as well, is a rededication of the Second Temple in Jerusalem, celebrates the enduring light of Jewish faith and identity. And for people who have been raised in the Jewish tradition but have for whatever reason, become more agnostic or unaffiliated with their faith, losing sight of that meaning for the season can be a beginning cause of distress. And another remedy for us, for those of us who may be less affiliated with the Christian tradition or have been found disenchanted with some of the directions of Christianity, Kwanzaa was developed as a way of supplementing or replacing the sort of Western traditional thinking about the holidays with the celebration of family, community, and culture for people of African descent. And this can be plugged in as a remedy to help ground us during the holidays, away from the more commercial and secular aspects of the holidays that push us to be worried about finances and gift giving and all those sorts of things. It's as a reminder, I'm sure most in the audience here are aware, it's a week-long ritual involving symbols, and then goes a Saba, the seven principles that serve as reinforcers of those ideas and beliefs and values which give us as a people strength. And I think beginning at that aspect, helping people find themselves. So one of the questions that I will ask during this time for people who are struggling, and certainly even during my initial evaluations of patients, I will ask them, are they, how do they maintain their spirituality? Are they spiritual in some way, as opposed to asking about their religion, but just, asking how do they support themselves through the good times and the bad times, and trying to find ways to help people reunite themselves with the spiritual truths of this particular season. And then sort of transitioning from sort of the purely spiritual to the psychological, there's a notion of embracing mindfulness as a way to beat back the holiday blues. And mindfulness is, there's no one way of being mindful, but consider it to be a practice of relaxed contemplation, meditation, or prayer. And there's sort of four features of the sort of a successful practice that can sustain one and help one to be mindful, to draw within, to step away from all the pressures that are outside, and to sort of calm oneself inside. Posture is an important part of whatever mindfulness practice that is taken. So, for example, whether it's mindful yoga practice and the positions that one takes as one's doing yoga, or prayer, kneeling at the bedside, or having the hands folded and head bowed, sitting in an erect sort of sitting posture as part of one's meditation. That posture is a way of getting one into the mindset of focused practice that involves the breath. That's an important aspect of mindfulness, being aware of one's breath. It's drawing one's attention inward to that which is more eternal. We are born breathing, we will die drawing our last breath is one of the eternal things, as opposed to the party that's occurring on Friday before Christmas, or the New Year's Eve event, or whatnot. Those sort of temporary, transitory things that can get us stressed. We draw our attention inward on our breath, focusing on the inspiration and expiration, and there are various ways of helping one become more mindful and focusing on the breath. And I keep using the word focus because that's an important part of the practice as well. A lot of times when people think of mindfulness or meditation, they're thinking that somehow they have to empty their mind. And a lot of people, that's impossible for most of us to think about not having a thought at all. But really the attention is on drawing one's focus away from the external to the internal initially, to just become calm and aware of one's own body sensations, whether that's through techniques like the body scan, in which one is focusing from the tip of the head to the tip of their toes in a sequential way, the various sensations throughout their body, the breathing, and so forth. That focus is critical to this practice. And then taking the time to actually embrace this mindfulness. Um, Oftentimes, with individuals who've never really contemplated this, I'll ask them about their prayer, for example. How much do they spend in prayer each day if they do pray? And oftentimes they'll say, well, maybe 5 minutes before I go to bed, and I say a quick prayer before meals and that sort of thing. And I say, that's great. Now think about taking those 5, 10 minutes, and how about if you can double that time every day? And they'll say, well, I mean, what do I do? What I say? And I'll ask them oftentimes, in your prayers, are you talking to God mostly, or are you listening to God? And most people will say they're talking, they're asking or thanking or doing that sort of thing. And I say, well, why don't you do the same thing in talking to God, but then spend about the same amount of time listening. You're not listening for a voice or a word or some sound necessarily, but that's a time to listen to your breathing or listen to nature, whatever is happening outside of your room, wherever you're praying, or just just being open to whatever is going on around you as a way of expanding that time. Ultimately, it's generally recommended that if someone can spend 30 minutes or more in mindfulness practice every day, that's when you begin to see some of the significant benefits in terms of reducing anxiety, uh, improving mood, preventing relapses in mood disorders, and that sort of thing. And that time does not have to be all at one time and one sitting. It can be broken up at many different times during the day. And oftentimes people will find that if they take a break when they're about to go to a stressful situation, like a meeting at work, they spend a few moments being mindful. That's added time that could be very beneficial. Another way to prevent blues and embrace the joy, now shifting more towards the biological, but this also has psychological aspects to it as well, is embracing those social rhythms that I spoke of earlier, the social rhythms, and making them rituals, things that will help you stay in harmony with your own circadian rhythms. So committing to routine times for rising from bed. And basically, when we say routine times, it's picking a time that within an hour you'll always be going to bed, basically. So it might be you might set, say, 9 to 10 as that window, or it could be 11:30 to 12:30. It could be 2 or 3 in the morning, as long as you're consistently going to bed at that time. And then setting a time for that first contact with another. Many of us, for example, we're not morning persons. And, somebody that's, calling us at like 9 in the morning, or wanting to, have a conversation at 10 in the morning, it just doesn't, just rubs us the wrong way. And if you have a partner in which this is an issue, you might try to work out a compromise in which the time that you have that first interaction is a little bit later than what your partner may think is normal, but it's important for your circadian rhythm to try to set it, and just promise that you'll have that first interaction. I just want to try to do it at a particular time each day. And then the start of the social function, whether that's work or whatever. Now, you may not have a whole lot of control over that, but being able to set a time, recognizing that that's the time that you're going to start is critical. one of the important aspects of this is that people with mood disorders, particularly bipolar individuals, where shift work used to be much more common in the American workplace than it is currently. One of the strong recommendations was for them to try to get another type of job or get accommodation on their job, to not do shift work, to not work nights one week and then days another week, where their social rhythm of starting social function, bedtimes, and so forth would be thrown off every week, because it was shown that these individuals did poorly in terms of their mood, did poorly in terms of their work performance, and a lot of that could be tied to the disruption of their social rhythms. So committing to routine times for rising from bed, first contact with another, start a social function, having dinner, and going to bed is critical in terms of doing well. I'm sorry, I advanced that by mistake. Let me go back. Okay. Now, again, with the holidays, there are a lot of temptations to alter these rhythms, and it's important to try to resist these temptations as much as possible. Obviously, there are going to be some things that come up in which, sort of the obligation is greater than, your ability to say no completely. But you might be able to, for example, that office party that you know, goes from 8 and could go until 2 in the morning. You just say, look, I'm gonna come early, and I really need to leave by 11 o'clock. And you show up, you do your thing, but because you need to get to bed by midnight, you just politely say your goodbyes, but you were there, you participated, you get all that you can out of the 3 hours that you're there. Or it might be, saying to folks that, they want you to come to, some sort of uh, dinner um, party that begins at, say, 7 o'clock, and your meal time is 5 o'clock, and you're trying to maintain that schedule. Well, you go ahead and you have a meal at 5, and you may, apologize and just say, I'm not, either I'm not, feeling well, or you just sort of lightly snack at the dinner party, but you've done your main meal at the time that you've set for yourself. Trying to maintain those rhythms will help your mood during the holidays. And then, lastly, looking at the sort of the purely biological aspects to embracing joy and preventing holiday blues. For those people who are dealing with seasonal affective disorder, or just, the unipolar depression or bipolar disorder, treatment, formal mental health treatment is necessary, and being able to, find a provider who can help guide you to feeling better is critically important. In particular, for seasonal affective disorder, it's important to recognize that light therapy has been shown to be as effective as medications or psychotherapies for folks with seasonal affective disorder. This is no joke about, dysregulation of the circadian rhythm. There are light boxes that are sold that will produce this 10,000 lux. That's the brightness of the light. This is about the brightness of the sun in an overcast sky outdoors. Most lighting indoors gives a few hundred lux. It's definitely not enough. So, just, turning on your night lamp early is not going to give you the sort of light that's needed to have a therapeutic effect. And just as a comparison, the sunshine, bright sunny day, direct sunlight is about 80,000 to 100,000 lux, just to give you some um, comparison or context for what the light box does. So turning on the light box, typically it's like an hour in the morning, before someone gets up. It's, on a timer. That's been shown every day to be helpful during these long nights of preventing significant mood disorders. Then there are psychotherapies such as cognitive behavioral therapy, dialectical behavioral therapy, interpersonal therapy and other therapies that have been shown to be helpful for the mood aspects of seasonal affective disorder. And then finally, of course, there are medications that, if necessary, that have been shown to be effective for changing around these symptoms. Certainly, if individuals are experiencing suicidal ideation, um, it's really necessary that they get some formal treatment and that medications become much more necessary in those circumstances. I had wanted to share some additional tools for folks that are interested, just to give you a sense of, there's a lot of resources that are out there to help people. Ultimately, if someone is having persistent symptoms of depression or anxiety, I encourage folks to reach out and talk with a health professional. But just to give you some resources that are out there, one of my colleagues in the Black Psychiatrists of America, she presented recently at our Transcultural Conference in November, Dr. Nina Mina, or Enjoy, as Dr. Enjoy, as she likes to go by. She has a website that will give you entry into the resources that she provides. She sees patients with she and her staff. They are licensed to provide services in 18 states in the United States. She also has a journal and other resources on her website that you can purchase to help sort of as the journal has a sort of a daily guide as to how to improve one's social rhythms and mood and that sort of thing. And so, highly recommend the work that she's doing out there. Another resource is that there are apps that are you can download to your phone, particularly when it comes to mindfulness. This is one of the more popular ones, Calm. There's Headspace. There are other apps that are out there that one can, again, put on one's phone to help, keep one's on path and on focus in terms of improving one's social rhythms, particularly with regards to mindfulness. So I share that with you as an additional tool. And then a last tool that I'll share is on YouTube. There are channels for meditation and mindfulness in particular. This one is an African American site, Haven Inspired. On the site, they have beginning meditation, guided meditation for males, females, young, old, on particular topics like anxiety, depression. And, there are other sites as well that one can search or Google to help get one started and maintaining one's joy. So let me summarize by just saying that I went over some of the biological, psychological, spiritual causes for holiday distress. Social determinants expose we Black Americans to be more at risk regarding some of these aspects for the distress, but we can prevent this distress and actually enhance our joy during the holiday period by embracing our ancestry, embracing the true meaning of the holidays, setting rituals for our social rhythms, and if needed, seeking evidence-based mental health care. As always, my presentation, I have some references for those who are interested in learning more about some of the things that I've presented. And with that, I will close the show. Thank you for your attention and happy to answer any questions or comments that you may have.
That's Neighbor Stevens.
Thank you, Dr. Maxey, and thank you, Dr. McLeod Bryant. I am so grateful that you shared these thoughts and gave the framework that you gave so that an individual who is concerned about how they're feeling has a way to work through it. But I want to ask, and it's somewhat contradictory because a lot of what is behind this is isolation.
Mhm.
But there is also, it may not be called seasonal affective disorder, but it definitely could be called holiday stress and blues that affects families. I mean, they're not in isolation, but because of some of the socioeconomic things that you reviewed, as well as some of the other factors that you reviewed, can impact both parents and children. Um, I will share that one of the things that was probably the most devastating thing to me as a young child was one day I said something to my grandmother about wanting to make sure that I got my message to Santa Claus about what I wanted. And I don't know if my grandmother was having a bad day. This was not typical of her, but she said, "There's no such thing as Santa Claus. Your mama and dad are trying to pull this together and get what you want." And I felt guilty. I felt stupid. And I felt disappointed. So that's just, one personal way I know that children can have their own issues during the holidays. So could you speak to that a little bit?
Yeah, that's an excellent question, and appreciate your sharing. Um, uh, it's a somewhat traumatic event. One of the things that I didn't talk about, and that is a significant stress for many families, is sort of an intergenerational trauma that has occurred and has led to oftentimes to estrangement of family members, where families can't get together totally because of conflicts that have occurred, and that makes the holidays that much more stressful. Or some people may not be totally estranged, they go and participate, but they're on pins and needles, or they're anxious or upset because of what's happened in the past. And that's probably a whole nother, do a whole nother presentation in terms of how common that is, and some of the causes. I look at some of the spiritual practices um, that we could do as family members to try to sort of take us out of those past memories, and to focus the attention of family on, again, the meaning of the season, to try to look at the stories of the Christ child, and other aspects, for example, of Kwanzaa, to sort of change our focus from, did you believe in Santa Claus or not? Or, you did this to me a year ago or 10 years ago, and you never apologize. All of those sorts of things. If we, sort of change our attention to sort of broader, larger, more permanent issues. And it's not something that happens easily. A lot of times folks have to be coached in order to, how to handle those sorts of things, because they've been triggered over the years by, these interactions, and they hold grudges, and it's a very difficult thing to overcome. But, ultimately, I think it can be overcome with, the sort of the right attitude and the right approach.
Thank you so much. Dr. Walks?
First of all, Dr. McLeod Bryan, thank you so much. And an excellent presentation, especially with the bringing the science and the spiritual together. So many times it's a challenge to do that. Um, I my question about this is really goes to the getting folks to understand that it's okay to have whatever you have. It's okay to have a seasonal biological challenge. It's okay to have a estranged family challenge. It's okay to have that. You mentioned some of the racial and personal stigma. And I think talks like the one that you're giving today help to make it less mysterious and make it more okay. And just thoughts about sort of broader, letting people know, hey, you don't have to start off being happy every time giving comes around, and hold it until New Year's.
Yeah, and that goes back to what the American Psychological Association found for many people was what made the holiday so stressful was that there's this pressure for it to be this sort of special, grand time that it can't always be perfect. And recognizing that there are going to be some bumps in the road as we try to celebrate. I think your point is well taken, and I hope that again, sort of pointing out just how prevalent seasonal affective disorder is, and the difficulties that people do experience during the holidays, that they are common, but there are ways to take care of ourselves, take care of one another in such a way that we minimize the depths in which our pain may be experienced during these times.
Thank you again so much. Is Dr. Lawson on?
Dr. Lawson's on. Steve,
He's not?
both muted. Okay. Dr. Lawson was unmuted and then muted again.
This is Jocelyn Hines. I can go in the intro.
Yeah, I just want to note that I want to appreciate Steve's excellent discussion of not only the biological, not only psychosocial, but also the spiritual and the cultural aspects of this as well. I mean, those are all come together this time of the year. He mentioned briefly the role of Kwanzaa, which is important in the kid, because basically the whole idea of Christmas is a post-white thing. But it's also, in fact, I remember a recent TV show, one of the TV shows, the host became irate that someone actually suggested that Santa Claus may be African American, and just disturbed by that. So it's an idea that's indoctrinated into a key point of our culture, and further extenuates this idea that we're somehow different from the rest of society. And the other point that you mentioned that's really important is, again, going back to the Clark's observation about the white doll and the black doll and which one you want to be. Because it, again, emphasizes this idea that when African American children see the white Santa Claus and the white doll, what does that say in terms of their identity? And it also reflects, you mentioned the role of the economic component. I remember living in Arkansas, that I saw a lot of the people who were doing Halloween trick-or-treating were adults. And I was wondering what was going on, because they were starving. That was the one way they could to get food. And the same thing recently in DC. Folks were crowding kids were trying to get toys because most of them did not have access to toys. Finally, I just want to note one biological point to mention again, that seasonal depression is mediated the pineal gland, and also and melatonin. Melatonin is over the counter now. What we find is that many people take too much of it, probably because they wanted to use it for sleep, when in fact it's decent for sleep, but it's mostly to mediate cyclical system. And then I just want to throw in that we know that because of stress and other factors, African American kids do not get as much sleep that they should be, and probably this may be a risk factor in terms of more seasonal depression than it should be.
Well, thank you so much, Dr. Lawson. Dr. Hines?
I just wanted to thank you for what a very informative talk. I learned several things. Like, oh, I hadn't, and one of the things that really stands out to me was about the importance of, keeping your schedule and how having a crazy schedule, which everybody assumes that pretty much after Halloween, you're supposed to have a crazy schedule,
Mhm.
for those 2 months, and the role that that can play in your overall depression. You mentioned pressure, but I just wanted to also ask you to speak a little bit about the guilt and obligation that also tends to drive people towards kind of perfectionism and super high standards of all the things that they have to do, and maybe some strategies to help us set realistic expectations from ourselves and or others.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for the comment and the question. Again, for me, it begins with sort of one's sort of spiritual outlook in terms of, what is what's the purpose of the celebration and whatnot. Understanding that a lot of folks, including one's own children, and I have three. Thankfully, they're grown now, and so they can kind of fend for themselves. But trying to, they get their lists together, and they want this, they want that, and trying to, remind them and remind oneself of, what's important. And I know that, for example, some families will spend the holidays that celebrate Christmas by going to a homeless shelter or a food pantry, or doing something along those lines to say, no, we're sort of changing the paradigm here. We're actually going to do something that really fulfills sort of the mission of the holidays, and that helps take one out of that. I need to do this. I need to do that. I need to get this or receive this sort of gift. And so that's, one of the strategies is just to sort of focus on what is sort of spiritually true. And then, ultimately also in terms of dealing with guilt, I think just being mindful, obviously in hearing, I give these sort of suggestions, and you may think to yourself, I'm going to keep my schedule, right? Since you realize that could be kind of important. But tomorrow happens, you go to work, things pop up, and you forget about it. But if you maintain some mindfulness and sort of ground yourself in the moment, that's one way of sort of, so, withdrawing into oneself and saying, okay, I'm not, I don't feel quite right. I'm not doing something. What did he say yesterday? What am I supposed to do? And trying to get oneself together as a way of focusing on oneself and how to take care of oneself and feeling good about oneself, so that you don't get into that cycle where you wind up feeling guilty or obligated to do something that's not part of uh, your schedule or your spirituality.
Well, thank you again so much. One of the things I just like to observe before we go to our final comments for today, that you brought up in spirituality, that it's very important not to just be material. And it brings to mind in the Christian Lord's Prayer, it says, not only let thy will be done, but give us this day our daily bread. Give us, and we forget the us. And sometimes we need to make sure we include the us. And my two ventures to church today, both of the pastors had the same sermon, Dr. Walks. And so I would like you to just comment, Dr. McLeod Bryant, a bit on how the love part of the spirituality helps take down the temperature of depression.
Um, that's a great question. So yeah, the wish to um, do no harm to others, to be kind, to to give to others, and wish the best for all. Those are components of love, and it's important message that certainly within the religious faiths, love is an essential part of the message, and that if one can embrace that, despite all the spears and arrows that may be um, shot at you, it does help to be um, um, to have a brighter outlook on one's life. And certainly, the science suggests that the more that we are engaged in, loving relationships, and the less alone that we are, the healthier and happier that we can live our lives. So, yes, I think love is an important component of combating the holiday blues.
Well, thank you so much. We're nearly at the top of our hour. Dr. Neighbor Stephen, anything in the chat? Any questions from our audience or comments?
No, not at this time.
Okay. Dr. McLeod Brown, would you care to give us some departing words as we go into the holiday season?
I wasn't quite prepared for that, but just, maintain those social rhythms, be mindful, and, just take a moment with you and your loved ones to, um, to honor your ancestors, and, practice your faith, whatever that faith may be, knowing that, there's something eternal out there that is looking down on you and wanting you to be the best that you can be in these tough times.
Yeah, thank you. Dr. Lawson?
Just want to note that, again, as Dr. Walsh noted, and Dr. McLeod-Bryan, that seasonal changes in mood is not unusual. But on the other hand, some of you out there are going to have, it gets very severe. Suicide rates, unfortunately, go up very high in this time of the year. Point to remember is that even with severe depression and even mood swings, that we have effective treatments. We've done now at least 2 antidepressants that are very, very effective. And we have some non-medical physiological mechanisms when any of the other interventions do not work. So we have a lot of hope. This is readily treatable if things get out of hand.
Thank you. Dr. Hines?
Well, again, just wanted to reiterate what was said several times in different ways, the opportunity for us to give ourselves some grace during this time of the year in particular, because again, the Lord is doing the same thing and is prepared to do the same thing for us, so we can try to do some for ourselves.
I like the word grace, Dr. Hines. We need it. Dr. Wilkes?
I once again, I'm following Dr. Hines's lead. I happened to make the mistake of going into a large mall yesterday, and people are just all over the place. And I had many, many thoughts, but one of the thoughts I had as I walked past Old Navy store with their big sign, gifts as low as $2. And I said, you know what? I don't want no $2 gift. And then I thought to myself, you know what? The opportunity is there for folks that don't have more than $2 to express to someone else that they were thinking about them and they made the effort to go and get them something. And so I just wanted to appreciate my own recovery from Grinchness yesterday, when I realized that having $2 gifts available is something that really matters for a lot of people, because Old Navy was crowded. And so I think that it is the thought. There is something about being able to show some grace, because we are all in different places in this journey. But as my my good friend says, we're all serving a life sentence together. And if we can show some grace to each other, maybe during the holiday season. And Dr. Lawson, I am going to spend more than $2 on your gift. So just so so thank you again, Dr. McLeod Bryant. Excellent presentation. Thank you.
Thank you for inviting me.
Dr. Barbara Neighbor-Stevens.
Well, I am so happy that we had this opportunity to have this conversation, because this can be such a painful time for so many people. And as we try all the time here at Black Health Trust, we try to get the word out and the information out so that you can do what needs to be done to deal with whatever's on your plate at this particular time. And you certainly gave us many ideas and possibilities to pursue if any of us are beginning to fall into the holiday blues. So again, thank you.
Thank you so much. Barbara, you introduced me to a great friend, and I want to, is Dr. Steiner on by any chance?
He was.
If he is coming to California in April. He's been blessed
Yes,
by
he's on.
a new grandchild, Dr. Steiner. Can you unmute in a minute?
Okay, there we go. Okay, we're unmuted. Okay, hello everyone.
Congratulations on your new
Hello.
grandchild coming in April.
Yep, we're coming in April to see you for sure.
Okay.
All right.
Whoops, there go the dogs. Yeah.
Thank you. Merry Christmas, Happy Hanukkah, happy everything to you.
Yeah.
And Dr. McLeod Bryant, again, thank you for chasing the holiday blues. But I am going to listen to B.B. King and Bobby Blue Bland in the next few days. Great day. And thank you very much, Simon. Thank you, my co-moderators. Have a great day.
Good day,
Bye.
Take
everyone.
care, everybody.